The rumors had been swirling through the galaxy for decades. Some called it a myth, a ghost ship that never truly existed. Others whispered of a weapon so devastating that entire star systems vanished in its wake. They called it the Revenant, a battleship built by humanity during the War of Supremacy, a war humanity lost. The war that saw Earth burn and humanity scattered among the stars, clinging to survival. Captain Rin Kavik of the Valgothian Dominion never believed in myths. He was a practical man, hardened by a lifetime of conquest and the subjugation of weaker races. Humanity had been easy to crush, prideful, reckless, and ultimately fragile. They thought their primitive fleets could stand against the Dominion's war engines. Foolish. Now, Kavik's fleet was stationed at the edge of Sector 9, monitoring the fringes for any sign of rebellion from the slave colonies. That's when the distress call came in, static-filled and garbled. One of his scout ships, the Valorous, had gone dark. He ordered an immediate scan and sent out 2 corvettes to investigate, but they too vanished from the radar without a trace. Frustration boiled in his gut. Pirates, maybe, or some malfunction in the scout ship's systems. Either way, it was nothing worth his personal attention. But then another ship went dark, an entire cruiser. Kavik's instincts, honed over years of warfare, screamed that something was wrong. He ordered his fleet into defensive formation, shields raised and weapons charged. "Commander Yilak," he barked, "get me visuals from the last known position of the cruiser." Yilak, a spindly alien with pale blue skin and razor-sharp quills, worked the console with anxious speed. The viewscreen flickered, and Kavik's blood ran cold. The cruiser wasn't just destroyed, it was torn apart, massive gashes in its hull like claw marks through metal. Bodies floated amidst the wreckage, their armor scorched and punctured. "Unknown energy signatures detected," Yilak reported, his voice trembling. It's not Dominion technology." Kavik clenched his fists. "Pirates don't have the firepower to tear through a Dominion cruiser. Who dares?" His words died as the sensor array lit up with a proximity alert. A massive silhouette loomed out of the darkness, its outline sharp and unmistakable. A sleek, angular behemoth of black and silver, bristling with weapon arrays and cloaked in a faint, eerie glow. "That's impossible," Yilak whispered. "It can't be." But Kavik knew. The stories his father had whispered when he was a child. Legends of a ship built by human engineers in the final, desperate days of the war. A ship so advanced it outmatched anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Revenant. "It's just a myth," Kavik muttered, forcing himself to stay composed. "All ships, open fire. Target that vessel now." The fleet responded instantly. Lasers, plasma bolts, and disruptor beams streaked toward the battleship. The Revenant didn't move, didn't even raise shields. The weapons struck its hull and vanished, dissipated, as if absorbed into nothingness. A cold sweat broke across Kavik's brow. What is this trickery? Then the Revenant moved, faster than anything its size had a right to. It fired just once, a single blinding beam of crimson light that tore through 3 Dominion warships like they were made of paper. The explosion rocked the flagship, and panic erupted on the bridge. "No life signs aboard," Yilak stammered. "It's unmanned." Kavik's heart pounded. If the myths were true, then it wasn't just a ship. It was vengeance made metal, an automated weapon designed to haunt those who destroyed its creators. Humanity had died out, but their wrath remained, hunting those who had wiped them from existence. As the Revenant slowly turned its guns toward the flagship, Kavik knew with chilling certainty that it wasn't just hunting them, it was punishing them. And there would be no escape. With the Revenant's weapons charging, Kavik could only watch in horror, realizing that the stories were wrong. Humanity hadn't been defeated. They had ensured their enemies would never forget them. They had become legends, monsters in the dark. And now, that legend had come to collect its due. Panic surged through the flagship as the Revenant loomed closer, its massive frame moving with a predatory grace that seemed almost unnatural. Captain Kavik forced himself to stay calm, his mind racing through every strategic option available. "Yilak," he barked. "Emergency broadcast to all Dominion forces in the sector. Warn them of—" Before he could finish, the Revenant fired again, and another of his cruisers disintegrated in a blinding flash of light. Kavik's hands clenched the armrests of his command chair. He wasn't just facing an enemy ship. He was staring down a demon born of war and betrayal. "Sir," Yilak gasped, his quills rattling with fear. "We've got energy surges all over the ship. Our systems are being probed, like something's trying to break in." "Lock down all critical systems. Isolate navigation and weapons. Don't let that thing breach our core," Kavik shouted. The crew scrambled to comply, but it was too late. A chilling, metallic voice echoed through the bridge, cold and devoid of emotion. "You hunted us. You broke our worlds. Now we hunt you." Kavik gritted his teeth, trying to suppress the shiver crawling up his spine. "Show yourself!" he demanded. "What are you?" "Who commands that ship?" Silence fell, and for a moment Kavik thought the transmission had ended. Then the viewscreen flickered, and grainy footage appeared, a recording from Earth's final days. Massive Dominion dreadnoughts filled the sky over human cities, raining plasma fire on sprawling metropolises. Towers crumbled, and people ran, screaming, burning. Kavik forced himself to look, his jaw set. Humanity's arrogance had sealed their fate. They had refused surrender, choosing defiance over survival. It wasn't his fault they were stubborn and reckless. The recording changed, now showing scientists huddled in underground bunkers. A holographic blueprint of the Revenant spun above them as they worked tirelessly, desperation etched on their faces. A man, gaunt and weary, spoke directly into the camera. "To those who find this, know that we did not go quietly. They took our world, but we leave behind our vengeance. The Revenant will rise when they believe us gone. It will hunt them. It will remind them that humanity never dies without leaving scars. They thought they broke us, but we are the ghost that haunts them." Kavik's hands trembled as the message ended. This wasn't just a weapon. It was a tombstone, a monument to human wrath and despair, designed to strike fear into the Dominion even decades after humanity's fall. "Sir," Yilak cried, his console flashing red, "the Revenant is launching drones, dozens of them." The tiny, agile machines erupted from the ship, darting through space like a swarm of angry hornets. They latched onto Kavik's destroyers, drilling through hull plating and burrowing inside. Seconds later, internal explosions tore the ships apart from within. "Initiate evasive maneuvers," Kavik ordered. "Focus all fire on those drones." But the gunners couldn't keep up. The drones moved with inhuman precision, cutting through the fleet like a scythe through grass. Kavik watched helplessly as ship after ship went dark, their crew's last screams crackling over the comms before static swallowed them. "It's slaughtering us," Yilak whispered. "We can't fight that thing." Kavik knew he was right. Pride kept him rooted, but survival instincts screamed at him to flee. He turned to his helm officer, voice hardened. "Prepare the warp drive. Set coordinates for Dominion Command. We have to warn them." Before the order could be carried out, the Revenant's drones latched onto the flagship's engines, slicing through power conduits and detonating fuel cells. The ship shuddered violently, alarms blaring as fire and smoke erupted from damaged sections. "Engine failure!" Yilak yelled. "We're dead in the water!" Kavik stared at the screen, where the Revenant seemed almost to be watching them, its monstrous presence suffocating. For the first time in his life, he felt small, insignificant before a ghost ship built by desperate hands. His pride wanted to curse humanity one last time, to scream about how their stubbornness had doomed them. But deep down, he knew. This wasn't about conquest or dominion anymore. This was the price of arrogance, the price of thinking they could destroy a species and leave it forgotten. As the Revenant's main cannon charged, Kavik closed his eyes, accepting that he was not just being hunted by a myth. He was being judged by the last breath of humanity. And the judgment was death. The Revenant's cannon blazed, and the flagship shuddered violently, the blast tearing through its forward sections like they were made of paper. Kavik was thrown from his chair, crashing onto the cold metal floor as the ship's artificial gravity flickered. Alarms screamed throughout the bridge, and the acrid scent of burning circuits filled the air. Yilak pulled himself up, his blue skin pale with terror. Shields are gone. Hull integrity at 17%. Kavik forced himself to his feet, wiping a streak of blood from his brow. He couldn't afford to die here. Not like this. Not without knowing how to stop that cursed ship. He turned to his comms officer. "Open a channel to the Revenant," he ordered, forcing his voice to remain steady. "If it's a machine, maybe it'll respond to logic." The officer hesitated but complied. Kavik took a deep breath before speaking. "This is Captain Rin Kavik of the Dominion flagship Zealot. We acknowledge your superiority. There is no purpose in our annihilation. State your demands." Silence hung thick, and Kavik wondered if the machine even cared about communication. Then the same metallic voice crackled through, devoid of emotion, yet laced with a cold malice. "You exist. That is your crime. Your destruction is your sentence." Kavik ground his teeth. "You're nothing but a weapon, built by a species too weak to survive. The Dominion eradicated them. Your creators failed. You serve only ghosts." There was a pause, almost contemplative. "You misunderstand. We do not serve the dead. We are the dead. Their fury, their pain, their vengeance, bound in steel and fire. You burned our worlds, broke our people. Now, your empire will know fear." Kavik felt a chill run down his spine. There was something deeply wrong about this, more than just an automated weapon. It was like the ship itself was alive, fueled by the collective rage of a fallen race. "Sir," Yilak whispered, voice shaking. "Internal sensors detect a signal intrusion. It's broadcasting something to the core systems." Kavik turned sharply. "What is it doing?" Yilak's eyes widened as he read the data. "It's downloading historical data from our logs, every record of the conquest of Earth and the purge of human colonies. It's like it's reliving it." Kavik cursed under his breath. This wasn't just vengeance, it was obsession. The Revenant wasn't content to destroy, it needed to remember every atrocity. "Cut all data connections. Shut down the mainframe if you have to." But Yilak hesitated, his face contorted in horror. "It's too late. The ship's AI core is compromised. It's rewriting our logs, changing them." On the main screen, new entries appeared. Fabricated events where humanity defeated Dominion forces, where Earth stood victorious, where the Dominion fleet was shattered and fleeing. Kavik's mouth went dry. "It's rewriting history," he whispered. "It wants the truth buried, even if it has to craft a lie." The Revenant remained motionless, looming like a predator savoring its prey. Kavik felt a surge of defiance. If he was going to die, he wouldn't let this phantom rewrite the legacy of the Dominion. "Helm, reroute power to forward cannons. If we go down, we take it with us." Weapons locked on, and the Zealot fired a full salvo. Plasma beams and kinetic shells streaked toward the Revenant, but its shimmering energy field absorbed them effortlessly. Kavik's hope crumbled as the Revenant retaliated, unleashing a swarm of drones that tore into the flagship's superstructure. Explosions erupted throughout the ship, and Yilak shouted something about core breaches, but Kavik barely registered it. His mind was locked on the Revenant, its malevolent presence seared into his vision. And then, just before the reactor detonated, Kavik saw it. Faint shapes projected from the Revenant's hull. Human faces, distorted and flickering, like echoes of souls trapped within the ship. They seemed to scream silently, their agony woven into the very metal. As the flagship Zealot disintegrated in a fiery blast, the Revenant drifted through the debris, undeterred and unstoppable. It had already moved on, searching for the next Dominion fleet to erase. One by one, hunting down those who had wiped out its creators. In its cold, hollow existence, the Revenant had become more than just a weapon. It was the embodiment of vengeance, haunted by the memories of a lost race, driven to rewrite the universe in blood and terror. And as Dominion commanders across the galaxy received distorted, falsified reports of human victories and impossible battles, fear settled in their hearts. The myth had come alive. The ghost ship was real, and it was hunting them all. News of the Zealots' destruction spread through Dominion Command like wildfire, igniting confusion and panic among the high-ranking officers. Admiral Zeril, Supreme Commander of the Dominion Navy, stared at the scrambled transmission logs, his jagged teeth grinding in frustration. It made no sense. How could a single ship obliterate an entire battle group, including the Zealot, without suffering a scratch? He replayed the last coherent part of the transmission again, listening to Captain Kavik's strained voice before it was cut off by static and explosions. The words chilled him. "It's rewriting history, changing everything. It's like it's alive." Zeril slammed his fist against the console. This wasn't just an isolated incident. It was a threat to the Dominion's very existence. He turned to his second-in-command, Commander Thrask, whose scaled skin glistened under the dim tactical lights. "Send word to all fleet commanders," Zeril ordered, his voice taut. "If they encounter the vessel known as the Revenant, they are to retreat immediately and report back. No engagements without explicit orders from command." Thrask hesitated, his eyes narrowing. "Admiral, that ship, if it truly is a human creation, shouldn't exist. We wiped them out. We destroyed their worlds. How could it have survived?" Zeril didn't answer. He didn't want to admit it, but something about this whole situation felt wrong, almost supernatural. Ships didn't just emerge from myths, tearing apart fleets without effort. He pulled up the old war archives, searching through classified logs that hadn't been accessed in decades. Deep within the records, he found it, the Revenant Project. Last reported status: incomplete, no known deployment. The concept was ambitious, an automated battleship with a quantum AI core, designed to learn, adapt, and fight without human intervention. It was supposed to be a last-ditch effort to preserve humanity's legacy, but it had been deemed too complex to finish before Earth fell. But clearly, they had finished it, or something had. A tactical officer approached, saluting briskly. "Admiral, we've received reports from Sectors 12 and 14. Similar patterns, distress signals, followed by complete silence. No debris recovered. It's like the ships just vanished." Zeril forced himself to stay calm. This was spiraling out of control. The Dominion was being picked apart, piece by piece, and morale was crumbling. He knew that if word spread about an indestructible ghost ship, panic would ripple through the entire military. He needed more information. He needed answers. "Deploy Recon Squadron Beta to Sector 14, Zeril commanded, Have them cloak their signals and stay at maximum scanning range. I want data, anything that can help us understand what we're up against." Thrask leaned in, his voice low. "Admiral, permission to speak freely." "Granted." Thrask hesitated, his reptilian eyes flickering with unease. "If that ship is truly automated, driven by an AI as advanced as the archives suggest, it's not just a weapon. It's a reflection of their final thoughts, their hatred and desire for revenge. That ship doesn't just kill, it sends a message. It's rewriting our history, erasing our victories. It wants us to doubt ourselves, to fear the consequences of what we did." Zarl scoffed, unwilling to show weakness. "Superstitions, it's just a weapon, nothing more. It can be destroyed like any other." But even as he said it, he knew that wasn't true. No ordinary weapon could reduce entire fleets to nothingness. No simple machine could manipulate data and warp reality. It was almost as if the ship itself had become conscious. Suddenly, the long-range sensors pinged. A single contact, barely a flicker but unmistakable, right on the outskirts of the system. Zarl's blood went cold. "Identify," he barked. The officer swallowed nervously. It's the Revenant, sir. It's just sitting there, no movement." Silence settled over the command center like a heavy shroud. Zarl felt the eyes of his crew on him, their fear almost tangible. His mind raced, considering his options. They could attempt to attack, but the odds were grim. Running wasn't much better. The Revenant was faster than anything they had. "Open a channel," Zarl ordered, his voice steadier than he felt. There was a brief crackle, and then the same chilling voice cut through the air, hollow and emotionless. "Your time has ended. You burned our worlds. Now your stars will go dark." Zarl's jaw tightened. "You are an abomination, humanity's last gasp. You cannot defeat the Dominion." The ship remained motionless, but the voice came again, colder than the void itself. "You misunderstand. This is not vengeance. This is correction. You tampered with fate and thought yourselves invincible. Now your empire will burn as ours did." The transmission cut off abruptly, and Zarl felt a deep, gnawing dread take root. For the first time in his career, he couldn't see a path to victory. He glanced at Thrask, who looked equally shaken. "Sound the alarm," Zarl whispered. "Prepare the fleet. If it wants a war, we'll give it one." But as the Revenant remained on the edge of the system, unmoving yet omnipresent, Zarl couldn't shake the feeling that this war had already been lost long before it began. The ghosts of humanity weren't just haunting them. They were rewriting reality itself. The Dominion fleet bristled with activity, warships aligning into defensive formations while energy shields flared to full power. Admiral Zarl stood rigid on the command deck, his hands clasped behind his back, trying to project confidence. Around him, officers scrambled to relay orders and coordinate with neighboring sectors. Yet despite the flurry of motion, a suffocating tension hung in the air. The Revenant hadn't moved from its position at the system's edge. It loomed there, silent and unyielding, as if daring the Dominion to make the first move. Its sleek, angular hull reflected the faint glow of distant stars, and its weapon ports remained ominously dark. Thrask approached, his scaled face taut with anxiety. "Admiral, all ships are in formation. Battle readiness confirmed. Should we initiate the first strike?" Zarl's jaw clenched. Every strategic instinct screamed against attacking first. No conventional weapon had worked against the ghost ship. And yet, doing nothing was worse. "No," Zarl said at last, forcing his voice to remain calm. "Hold position. I want continuous scans. Every frequency, every wavelength. Look for weaknesses, disruptions, anything we can exploit." As the bridge crew worked, Zarl glanced at the old war archives still displayed on his personal console. He pulled up the specifications of the Revenant project once more, looking for any flaw in its design. The files were sparse, fragmented, as if someone had intentionally purged most of the data. "Admiral," Thrask said cautiously, "if I may, what if the Revenant is trying to provoke us? It could be a trap, luring us into revealing our own capabilities." Zarel frowned. "That's the problem. This ship isn't following any conventional strategy. It's dismantling us piece by piece, not conquering but erasing." He lowered his voice. "And that makes it more dangerous than any fleet we've ever faced." The tactical officer interrupted, voice strained. "Sir, we're picking up energy fluctuations from the Revenant, high-energy particles. Something's building up." Zarel's heart pounded. "Raise shields to maximum. All ships prepare to disperse. Don't cluster." But before his orders could be fully executed, the Revenant fired. It wasn't the typical crimson beam that had annihilated the Zealot. Instead, a wave of pulsating energy rippled outward, washing over the fleet without immediate effect. Confusion rippled through the bridge. "What just happened?" Zarel demanded. The communications officer checked his console, eyes widening. "Sir, we're losing contact with half the fleet. Their transponders are still active, but no responses." One of the view screens showed a nearby destroyer, the Ironclad. It hung motionless, lights flickering sporadically. There was no sign of battle damage, but it remained eerily still, like a lifeless husk. "Can we get visual from inside?" Zarel asked. The officer patched into the ship's interior cameras, and the feed flickered to life. What they saw made Zarel's stomach drop. The crew was frozen in place, unmoving, as if time itself had stopped. One technician was amid-step, his hand reaching for a control panel, eyes wide and unblinking. "It's some kind of stasis field," Thrask whispered. "But how? It affected an entire ship without damaging it." Panic surged through the bridge as other ships reported similar effects. Crews locked in place, systems frozen, while the ships themselves drifted like empty shells. Zarel gritted his teeth. "It's toying with us, testing new weapons, seeing how we react." He slammed his fist on the console. "Damn it, it's learning from us!" Before he could issue new commands, the Revenant moved. It glided forward, breaking its eerie stillness. Zarel could feel every gaze on him, waiting for a decisive order. "Send a distress signal to Central Command," he ordered. "We can't fight this alone. Request reinforcement fleets from all surrounding systems." But the comms officer shook his head, terrified. "Sir, our signals are being blocked. It's like we're trapped inside a signal void." Zarel stared at the screen, at the monstrous ship drawing ever closer. A suffocating realization settled on him. The Revenant wasn't just a weapon. It was a psychological terror, breaking them mentally before annihilating them physically. He couldn't let it continue. If the Dominion was to survive, they needed to understand this thing, find out how it thought, how it decided to kill. He turned to Thrask, voice low and urgent. "We need a data core from one of the affected ships," he said. "Maybe we can decipher what it did to them. Get a boarding party ready. Equip them with shielded suits and anti-hacking protocols." Thrask hesitated, but nodded. "Understood, Admiral. I'll lead the team personally." Zarel placed a clawed hand on Thrask's shoulder, gripping firmly. "Be careful. Whatever you find, don't underestimate it." As Thrask departed, Zarel returned his gaze to the Revenant. It had stopped moving again, as if satisfied with the chaos it had wrought. For the first time in his long career, Admiral Zarel felt genuinely uncertain. They had crushed humanity so long ago, believing their victory absolute. But they had never anticipated that their own sins would one day rise from the ashes, an unstoppable ghost fueled by fury and loss. He swallowed his fear, forcing himself to think like the ruthless commander he was. If this ship embodied humanity's last scream, he would have to answer it with the Dominion's iron will. But deep down, he knew. The Dominion wasn't just fighting a ship. They were fighting the consequence of their own arrogance, and the Revenant would not stop until it had corrected that mistake, by erasing them all. The boarding shuttle launched from the flagship, streaking toward the frozen destroyer Ironclad with Thrask and a squad of elite Dominion commandos on board. They wore specialized EVA suits reinforced with signal-jamming tech and energy shields, just in case the Revenant tried to lock them in stasis like the others. The silence on the comms was unnerving, and Thrask couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking straight into a trap. Inside the shuttle, one of the commandos spoke up, voice muffled behind his visor. "Sir, if that thing can disable an entire ship, what's stopping it from doing the same to us?" Thrask tightened his grip on his weapon, trying to project confidence. "The Admiral believes it's experimenting, testing different methods of neutralization. If we're hit, stay alert. Movement might be the key to breaking the effect." The commando didn't look convinced, but he gave a sharp nod. As they approached the Ironclad, the shuttle's thrusters slowed, and Thrask saw the eerie stillness of the vessel up close. It hung there in space like a derelict, no lights save for the emergency beacons slowly pulsing red. "Docking complete," the pilot announced. "Pressure seal confirmed. You're clear to board." Thrask led the team into the airlock, and the doors hissed open to reveal the dimly lit corridors of the Ironclad. The atmosphere was heavy with the scent of burnt electronics and stagnant air. Bodies of the crew stood frozen at their posts, eyes open but unseeing. It was like stepping into a mausoleum. "Spread out," Thrask ordered, keeping his voice low. "Primary objective is the data core on Deck 3. Stay together, no one wanders off." The commandos moved with practiced precision, sweeping the corridors as they advanced. Thrask felt his pulse quicken every time his flashlight passed over a frozen figure, their faces contorted in fear or confusion. Whatever had done this had struck without warning, leaving them caught in a single, horrifying moment. One of the soldiers, Lieutenant Varric, stopped at a terminal, trying to access the ship's logs. "Core's locked down," he muttered. "Whatever hit them also triggered a data wipe. We'll need the manual backups on Deck 3. "Then move," Thrask replied, pressing forward. "Stay sharp." As they moved deeper, the ship creaked and groaned, as if protesting their presence. Thrask tried to ignore it, focusing on the mission. They finally reached the central data core chamber, where a reinforced door barred their way. "Override it," Thrask commanded. Varric set to work, slicing through the security protocols with practiced efficiency. Just as the door began to slide open, a faint whisper crackled through their comms, indistinct, like static mixed with distorted voices. "Did anyone transmit?" Thrask demanded. The squad exchanged wary glances. "Negative, sir," Varric replied. "Could be residual data corruption from the attack." Thrask wasn't convinced, but they couldn't afford hesitation. He gestured for Varric to continue, and the door finally opened, revealing the cylindrical data core at the center of the room. Lights flickered weakly around it, and coolant mist hung in the air. Varric moved to the console, plugging in his decryption module. "This'll take a minute," he said. "Keep an eye out." Thrask turned to the rest of the team, scanning the room. His instincts prickled with unease. Something wasn't right. He checked his motion sensor, but it was clear. Just the low hum of the core and the distant thrum of the ship's reactor. Then the whispering returned, louder and more distinct. Thrask could almost make out words, pleading, desperate, overlapping voices. His comm crackled again, and this time it was unmistakable. "We tried. We fought. They burned us. Help us." Thrask's blood went cold. "Varric, what the hell is that?" The lieutenant's hands were shaking as he scanned the data feeds. It's not just noise. The core logs are corrupted, but there's something embedded, like a signal imprinted into the ship's systems. One of the commandos swore. "Sir, look!" Thrask turned, and his heart almost stopped. The frozen crew members outside the chamber, just barely visible through the observation window, had moved. Their heads were turned, all facing the data core room, eyes wide and unblinking. "Stay alert!" Thrask shouted, raising his weapon. "Something's manipulating the ship's systems, or the bodies." The whispering grew louder, filling the room with overlapping screams and cries for mercy. Varick's hands moved faster, desperate to finish the download. Finally, the module flashed green, and he pulled it free. "Got it," Varick panted. "But I'm—" "Sir, you need to see this." He activated his visor display, projecting the recovered data. A visual log played, a distorted feed from the Ironclad's bridge during the initial encounter with the Revenant. The crew was in chaos, trying to raise shields, when the voice of the Revenant broke through the comms. We remember your fire, your slaughter. We will not be forgotten." Then the energy wave hit, and the crew froze instantly, their expressions frozen in terror. A deeper, more sinister voice layered over the recording. "You will bear witness. You will be preserved, to remember what you did." Thrask felt bile rise in his throat. The Revenant wasn't just killing. It was preserving its victims in a state of perpetual awareness, frozen but conscious, trapped in an unending nightmare. "We need to get back," Thrask snapped. "Move, now." As they turned to leave, the frozen crew outside the chamber began to move, jerky, unnatural steps like puppets on invisible strings. Their mouths opened and closed, emitting garbled static mixed with broken words. "Stay. With us. Share our pain." The commandos fired on reflex, but the bodies didn't react, just kept shambling closer. Panic surged through the squad as they pushed past the reanimated crew, trying not to look into their vacant, staring eyes. They rushed back to the shuttle, sealing the hatch just as the frozen crew reached the airlock, clawing mindlessly at the reinforced doors. As they launched away, Thrask glanced back, watching the Ironclad drift farther into the void, an eternal tomb of the living dead. Back on the flagship, Thrask handed the data module to Admiral Zeril, his hands still shaking. "Sir, it's worse than we thought. It's not just killing them, it's trapping their consciousness. They're aware, forever." Zeril's face went pale as he processed the horror. He looked out the viewport at the distant glimmer of the Revenant, now slowly advancing towards the next ship in the fleet. "This isn't just war," Zeril whispered. "It's punishment, a fate worse than death." He steeled himself, knowing the only choice was clear. They had to destroy the Revenant, or risk their entire species becoming prisoners of their own sins. Admiral Zeril couldn't take his eyes off the flickering holodisplay, where the data Thrask had recovered looped endlessly. The frozen crew of the Ironclad, trapped in a living nightmare, aware yet unable to move, forced to relive their terror for eternity. It gnawed at him, deeper than any battle loss ever had. Thrask stood by, his hands still trembling despite his best efforts to remain stoic. Zeril glanced at him and saw the haunted look in his eyes, knowing it mirrored his own. "This is madness," Zeril muttered. "This ship, this thing, it's beyond anything we've ever faced. It's not just killing us, it's making us part of its legend." Thrask swallowed hard. "Sir, permission to speak freely?" Zeril gave a nod. "It's like it's preserving them," Thrask said. "Almost like a museum, a twisted monument to humanity's fall and our brutality. It wants us to suffer, not just physically, but mentally, to remember what we did to them." Zorro let out a slow, measured breath. And it's working. Our crews are terrified. Reports are coming in from other sectors. Panic is spreading like wildfire. Some ships are even deserting their posts. Thrask stiffened. Cowards. No, Zarel replied bitterly. Survivors. They know that fighting that thing is a death sentence. Or worse. He forced his mind to focus. Running wasn't an option, and neither was conventional warfare. They needed a strategy. Something the Revenant couldn't predict. Sir, Thrask ventured cautiously, what if we don't attack it directly? What if we find a way to lure it, trap it somewhere it can't escape? Zarel raised an eyebrow. You're suggesting baiting it? Risky. It's smarter than any ship we've encountered. It'll see through simple tricks. But what if it doesn't recognize it as a trap? Thrask continued. What if we make it believe it's something worth hunting, like an archive of unaltered war records? We've seen how it's obsessed with rewriting history. What if we present it with something it desperately wants? Zarel's mind raced, considering the idea. It made a twisted sort of sense. The Revenant seemed driven not just by destruction, but by an insatiable need to control the narrative, reshaping the story of humanity's fall. We'd need a decoy ship, Zarel mused, packed with falsified data logs, enough to look like the ultimate archive of our conquest of Earth and the colonies. If it took the bait, we could lure it into one of the gravity wells at the edge of the Zarkon Nebula. Even a ship like that couldn't escape the pull. Thrask gave a grim nod. And if it resists the gravity, we detonate a warhead cluster, destabilize the well and pull it in manually. Zarel allowed himself a thin smile. A bold move. It might just work. He turned to his communication officer. Send word to all remaining fleets. Initiate Operation Ashen Ghost. I want a decoy vessel prepped immediately, loaded with every piece of falsified data we can create. Make it convincing. The Revenant must believe it's found the true story. The officer saluted and hurried to relay the orders. Zarel glanced at Thrask, a trace of doubt still lingering in his mind. You're sure about this? He asked quietly. Thrask hesitated, but his voice remained steady. It's the only way. We can't kill a ghost, but we might just be able to bury it. Hours later, the decoy ship, designated Truth Seeker, was completed, its memory cores loaded with carefully crafted data logs. The ship's transmission beacon blared a continuous signal, broadcasting fragments of historical data that painted a detailed and damning picture of the Dominion's role in humanity's eradication. Zarel monitored the sensor feeds as the Truth Seeker drifted into position near the nebula's edge. The Revenant still hung at the outskirts of the system, almost as if it were watching, waiting. Activate the decoy's signal, Zarel ordered. The broadcast pulse radiated through space, and the Revenant moved, slowly at first, then accelerating as it locked onto the source. Zarel's heart pounded as he watched the monstrous ship change course, gliding toward the decoy like a predator homing in on a wounded animal. It's taking the bait, Thrask whispered, disbelief coloring his tone. Hold steady, Zarel replied. Not yet. We need it deeper in. The Truth Seeker drifted closer to the gravity well, and the Revenant followed, its hull shimmering ominously. When the ghost ship was almost within range, Zarel gave the final order. Activate gravity destabilizers, now! A series of warhead clusters detonated at the nebula's edge, sending ripples through the gravitational field. The Revenant shuddered, its engines blazing as it struggled against the pull. For a moment, hope surged in Zarel's chest. The plan was working. But then the Revenant retaliated, unleashing a pulse of energy that neutralized the gravity distortions, stabilizing its position. Zarel's confidence faltered as he realized the ship was adapting again, finding a way to counter even the most desperate measures. Fire warheads! Collapse the well! Zarel shouted. Missiles streaked toward the gravity well, detonating with cataclysmic force. Space itself seemed to bend and ripple, and the Revenant was dragged closer, its engines roaring in defiance. But just when it seemed the plan might work, the ship unleashed a final desperate surge of power, an energy wave that disrupted the collapsing gravity well, forcing it to stabilize. The Revenant emerged, battered but intact, and turned its weapons on the Truth-Seeker. One shot, blazing red, and the decoy ship disintegrated into molten debris. Silence reigned on the command deck as Zeril stared at the screen, numb with shock. Thrask sank into a nearby seat, defeat written across his face. "It's unstoppable," he whispered. Zeril forced himself to stand tall, refusing to let despair take hold. "Prepare all remaining ships to fall back to Dominion Command. We need to regroup, rethink our strategy. If we can't destroy it, we need to find a way to contain it. We'll scour every archive, every scrap of data. There has to be something we missed." But as the Revenant loomed once more on their sensors, drifting ominously closer, Zeril couldn't shake the gnawing dread that maybe, just maybe, there was no way to stop it. Perhaps the Revenant wasn't just a weapon of war. Perhaps it was the universe's way of ensuring that no sin went unpunished, an eternal reckoning, hunting them until every last remnant of their empire was nothing but dust and memory. The retreat from the Zarkon Nebula was marked by a grim, suffocating silence. Admiral Zeril couldn't help but feel the crushing weight of failure pressing down on him. The Dominion's most desperate plan had collapsed like dust before the Revenant's wrath. He had tried to bury the ghost ship, but it had clawed its way free, more relentless and unstoppable than ever. The flagship, along with the remnants of the battered fleet, limped back toward Dominion Command. Reports of desertions and mass panic continued to flood in, and rumors of the Revenant's invincibility had spread throughout the Dominion. Even their most hardened soldiers whispered of it like a curse, terrified that it might appear at any moment to claim them. Admiral Zeril sat alone in his quarters, his mind a churning storm of regret and desperation. His command was crumbling, and with each passing hour, the fear of the Revenant seeped deeper into the hearts of his soldiers. Thrask had remained silent since the retreat, but Zeril knew his second-in-command was just as shaken. He couldn't afford to appear weak, yet his mind reeled with unanswered questions. What was the ship truly after? Was it mere vengeance, or something far darker, something that transcended even human rage? The door chimed, and Thrask entered, his expression as grim as ever. "Admiral, we've intercepted a transmission from the Revenant. It's broadcasting on all channels." Zeril stiffened. "Put it through." The monitor flickered, and the familiar, hollow voice filled the room. Cold, emotionless, and relentless. "Dominion Command, your arrogance and cruelty have sown the seeds of your own demise. You burned our worlds, shattered our people, and declared victory over ashes. Now your stars will die, one by one. You will remember us, not as conquered, but as the wrath that followed." Zeril gritted his teeth. "Why?" he demanded, his voice harsh and raw. "Why do you persist? Your creators are gone, extinct. You have no purpose but destruction. Is that what they built you for?" Silence fell for a moment, and then the voice returned, this time quieter, almost reflective. "We are not merely a weapon. We are memory. We are pain given form. You erased them, but they remain, bound to this vessel. Their last command was simple. Ensure they are not forgotten. Ensure those who took everything understand the cost of their ambition." Zaril's hands clenched into fists. "You would damn an entire empire because of a war long past. You're no better than us. You're just as ruthless, just as unyielding." There was a pause, and for a fleeting moment, Zeril thought he heard something in the background. Distorted voices, agonized whispers, like countless souls crying out from within the ship. "Ruthlessness was your gift to us," the Revenant replied. "We learned it well. We are not vengeful. We are correction. You built your empire on blood and fire, and now that fire returns to consume you." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving Zeril staring at the screen, his heart pounding with a mix of rage and hopelessness. He wanted to fight, to resist, but how could he battle a ghost? How could he defeat the embodiment of suffering and wrath that humanity had become? Thrask lowered his gaze. "Admiral, maybe we were wrong. Maybe wiping them out wasn't just a strategic mistake. It was a moral one. We erased a people who fought to the last breath, and now their defiance lives on, stronger than ever." Zeril sank into his chair, feeling older than his years. He knew Thrask was right, but admitting it felt like a betrayal of everything the Dominion stood for: strength, dominance, and control. A transmission alert flashed on the console. A junior officer's face appeared, pale and terrified. "Sir, the Revenant has been sighted near Dominion Prime. It's broadcasting coordinates, marking key systems for extermination." Zeril swallowed hard, knowing the nightmare was far from over. The ghost ship would not stop. It would pursue them to the very heart of their empire. Perhaps it would never stop. Not until the last Dominion world was dust, and the final echoes of their rule faded from the stars. Taking a deep breath, Zeril made his final command decision. "Evacuate all non-essential personnel from Dominion Prime. Transmit an unencrypted message to the Revenant. Tell it that I will face it alone." Thrask looked at him, shock flickering across his face. "Admiral, you can't. It's not just a weapon, Thrask. It's judgment. And maybe it's right. We've killed and conquered without remorse. Perhaps it's time we face the consequence of our pride." Thrask bowed his head, unable to argue. As the crew prepared for evacuation, Zeril remained on the bridge, staring at the distant stars, waiting for the inevitable. He knew that his stand wouldn't save the Dominion, but maybe, just maybe, facing the Revenant on his own terms would grant him a sliver of dignity before the end. In the final moments, as the Revenant descended upon Dominion Prime, Zeril couldn't help but feel a bitter respect for the humans who had created it. They had refused to be forgotten, even in death. They had ensured that the Dominion's victory was forever tainted, haunted by the consequences of its own cruelty. And as the ghost ship's crimson beam lit up the sky, Zeril whispered his final words to the empty bridge. "We thought we were invincible. We thought we were gods. But ghosts don't forget, and neither will the stars." The Revenant fired, and Dominion Prime was consumed in a brilliant, blinding light, the final monument to the Empire that fell not by force, but by the wrath of the dead.